I just want to thank y'all for being here. So, the topics, Josie, do you remember what the topics were? You came up with really good ones.
It was like the special, wow, I'm spacing. Women's recovery. Yes. How women's addiction and recovery are different. And then judgment in the recovery community.
Yeah, so I definitely, when I first got into recovery, I always knew that I was going to be able to share my experience with a lot of people. I always had that on my heart ever since early recovery. So I started doing a lot of research ever since I got into early recovery. And I looked at statistics, I looked at facts, I looked at everything. And women are held to a different standard than men, right? We're mothers, we're the caretakers. Unfortunately, that's just how it is in society. You know, I saw a TikTok earlier today about this guy talking about how the woman signed over her rights to her children, right? Which is whatever it may be. But when men do these things, it's not as bad as a woman doing it because we're held to these standards of being the mother, of being the caretaker, of having our fucking shit together all the time, right? So, like, when something comes about and we're not, baby. So it's just, we're held to a different standard, you know, and it's harder for us to be able to recover and to be able to focus on what's really important during these times, because what we need to do is really focus in on ourselves and our recovery. And when we get into recovery, it seems like we're held to the standard of get your fucking shit together right now, you know. And I think that's what's hard, is because we all we have that natural instinct, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And women are like, we're emotional creatures. So there's this extra standard with that. Like, I don't want to say it's expected for a man to be an addict, but when you think of addiction, it's more commonly associated with men because, I mean, they have special obstacles too. They feel like they aren't able to show that emotion, so they're more likely to numb it. But women don't like to show when we're emotional. We are emotional, but we don't like to show it because, like you said, we have to keep everything together. We're the glue of the family, the glue of the household, and that it puts an extra amount of pressure on us.
Exactly.
I can totally agree, you know, like with me being in treatment. So like my addiction started shortly before I got pregnant with my son, but my IV use and the chaos of my addiction didn't really start until after I had my son. And to be in treatment, to be a mother, I just feel like there's such a stigma. Like, what do you have? I don't know. I just feel like it's a different stigma, a different judgment that you get, you know, because you're supposed to be being a mom, and how could you? And, you know, yeah, I definitely feel like it's a little different.
It absolutely is. I remember when my daughter was about 2 years old, we were staying in a homeless shelter. And the guy that ran like the family side of the shelter was so judgmental and straight up mean to me because I was a mom in recovery. Like, I was the scum of the earth. And like, how dare you bring your 2-year-old here? And nobody else. I don't know if it's because, you know, they weren't as open about their recovery, or I don't know. There is a lot more judgment, I feel, towards women in recovery, especially as mothers.
And that's why I think it's like so important to understand that we are all strong, right? Like, we all have our own stories and we've all been through stuff. And I love it when, like, it's so sad because the town next to me that has all of this stuff for recovery and stuff like that, it's for men. It's for men. And I'm like, why? So you guys have like the recovery, like they have a recovery farm and everything. and there's nothing for women. Like, there's literally one place compared to like 3 different men's place. Like, they have halfway houses, they have all this stuff, and I'm like, but there's nothing for women, and it's so hard to see. But like, how often do you hear about even a place with like women going into a halfway house with their children? Like, that's so amazing, is to be able to recover with your children next to you. And getting people's story on our YouTube channel, we hear a lot about parents using, they're like, I was a using parent. And people get so much shame and guilt from that, and it is very hard. But you also need to see it from the other side, that when you recover and you find yourself and you're doing that, and your children get to see you again, and you get your kids back, you fight for their custody, you do all these things that you're capable of doing now, right? Like, I feel like people look at addiction, and it's so hard because society puts such, well, how do I want to say it? Society puts a title on something, and then that's it. Like, there's no way around it, and it's sad to see. But people, like, it's hard. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. I definitely did. It's so much harder to be a woman in recovery, because you have to look at it as being able to fight for your kids and stuff. It's so good to turn around and have your kids see how far you've come. Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody looks at addiction like, oh, you chose to be, or you, like, yeah, a lot of people make bad choices that lead them into bad situations, and it's sad to see. And that's one thing I would like to see more of, is the fact of more halfway houses for single fathers and single mothers. Like, I don't know why.
Amen to that. Amen.
Like,
Amen.
There's a lot of single men that have their children as well and face the same struggles. But it's like, I'm just blown away. Like, literally, men have way more. And if you look up, what is the place called?
What state are you in?
I'm in New York.
Huh.
So the Oxford houses, if you look those up, Oxford houses are like 10-1. Men are 10, women are 1. So I'm like, why? And you know what's crazy? If we're seen as the caregivers and the lovers and the moms, why are we not breaking those cycles and helping the women? Like, why are we not helping the women to get their children back so we can raise our children?
Your state's different. This is a mother state in Oklahoma. Like,
What?
men can't get help nowhere. Yeah.
What? That's
Men
so
get
good to
treated
hear.
like shit here. Yeah. I went through with my fiance. Yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
North Dakota's a lot like you were saying, Olivia. Like, there used to be a women's treatment facility here that allowed children. They've just closed that now. It's a co-ed transitional, and all the other treatment centers are all co-ed. That's another thing I think is key, is to keep those treatment centers separated, because women and men who recover in the same house in early recovery, it just never, in my experience, goes at all. It's a very different recovery process. There's a lot of trauma that women, and not that men don't have trauma, I'm not trying to undermine men's recovery at all. But I feel like more often in women, there's different traumas. When you've got the sexual trauma, a lot of times they don't talk about things like they should openly, in those co-ed treatment centers. And men too, if men have been through that, they don't want to talk about it with women around. And I think men and women should recover in separate places. I don't like co-ed treatment centers. I just don't think they serve a good purpose.
I definitely agree with you there, Jenny, because when I went to my rehab, it was men and women, and they expected the women to be the ones in line, like the ones that didn't contact the men, and you would get punished and everything. But men weren't held to the standard of not getting in contact with the women. Like, we weren't allowed to talk to each other. And one girl that was there, she had so much trauma that she needed, it was so sad. She needed somebody to stand in front of her and somebody behind her, and somebody next to her. It was literally like bodyguards. And she had women do that. Like, she had such anxiety and fear and everything over men and the trauma that she did experience, and that's just hard to see, and then in that, it's crazy, like, the women would get in trouble but expected to, like, you literally had to, like, it's crazy, you had to put your head down when a man walked down the hall. Are you fucking, you don't know me, you know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not, doesn't mean that I'm interested in men. Like, I'm not putting my head down, I'm not surrendering to anybody's appearance. Like, I don't know what that means, and it's just sad to see, like, women we do recover differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I think it's so important is to be involved with a wonderful group of ladies, to really just help each other along the path.
So I live in a sober house for women up in Maine.
Oh, cool.
We do allow children in our house. We don't currently have any children, but we're one of only 4 or 5 houses in the whole state of Maine that allow your children to be with you. It's crazy. I don't have my kids here. A few years ago, I went to prison and I signed my son over to my mom. And my other kids were older. They lived with their dad. So I get to completely put all my focus into my recovery this time. I've been in and out so many times, and then going to prison, I thought that would cure me. I mean, I worked on myself while I was in there, but when I got out, I thought, oh, well, I have almost 4 years. I'm good. Like, I don't need to work on myself. And that's definitely, I learned the hard way that wasn't true. So this time I decided to do it completely different. I went to detox. I'm living in the sober house in a town that I was unfamiliar with. I mean, so now almost pretty much everybody I know that lives around me is in recovery, or I work with them and they support my recovery. My children are involved in my recovery. They've actually been asking me all morning. I've been video chatting with them all morning, and they've been asking me, can I get on the live and watch you girls? Like, they're very involved in my recovery, which is great. But it's definitely different. I mean, I get judged just because I don't have my kids with me. But that was the best choice for my kid. I mean, I had to go away for 4 years. I'd rather my mom have him than the state step in. And we discussed it when I was getting out. Like, are you taking him back? Or, like, I prefer me keep him. And as hard as a decision it was, she'd raised him more than half of his life. That was a better environment for him to be in. Like, I didn't know where I was going to be, so I told her, no, he's going to stay with you as long as I can be a part of his life. And I am. I see him whenever I want. I video chat with him all the time. They know what's going on with me. So it's good. Like, it was the best decision. A hard decision. As a mother, we want our kids with us, but sometimes that's not always the best thing for them.
I give you so much props, Kimberly. Thank you for sharing your experience, because I think that it just goes with the topic. Like, I saw that TikTok of the mom giving her rights over to the father, and the dad was like all getting hyped up and everything. And I'm like, but, like, what's the difference between a woman doing it and men do it all the time? Like, with all respect, but, like, why are we bad if that's what we choose? And I think it's so important because you helped him by helping you, and that there's so much strength behind that, Kimberly. I'm so glad that you shared that, because you getting your life together, you're able to be there for the birthdays, and you made the smart decision to even give them to your mom and not the state. Like, if that's wonderful, because foster care, it's so sad. I saw something about like 5 million children from the 2000s to 2017 go into foster care due to some drug use from the family, like from the parents. So these kids are put into the system because their family or the parents were using drugs, selling it, all of that stuff. And it's like, wow, imagine if we fixed one thing. Like, imagine if we help the parents to get better. Then we don't have 5 million kids going into the foster care system. We're helping multiple systems if we help the right system, you know? So I'm proud of you. That's awesome. So do you enjoy the sober house there? Maryland's beautiful, isn't it?
No, I live in Maine.
Oh, Maine. Oh, my goodness.
It's
Maryland.
cold. I live right by the ocean, which I've never done before. I've always lived in like one of the two bigger cities in Maine. Not that our cities are very big, but one of the two bigger cities. But my dad's from this area, and we live right on the coast. It's absolutely gorgeous here.
That's awesome.
I like the house the majority of the time. I mean, it can be a struggle living with females. And I'm like the house leader, so like I get a lot of the crap. Like a lot of times they'll get mad at the manager who runs the house, but because she doesn't live here, a lot of all that comes on me. But I mean, I have strong shoulders, so I can deal with it. But it can get stressful at times.
That's awesome.
It is not. I'll play in your room, baby.
And like along with like the judgment of everything, it's crazy how people are like, just the way that they judge other people's recovery. You know, I know that's also one of the topics that we came to speak about is judgment. And you know, I'm really glad that we're able to do this podcast because I want a resource for women to go on to and listen to multiple different women, and whoever they click with or with all of them, you know, they get to find that and they get to understand that it doesn't matter what your recovery looks like. Just know that there's people here for you that will support you and will love you through your own journey of finding yourself, because that's what recovery really is. Like, you really get to find out what works for you, what doesn't. You get to figure out who you are. And I hated myself for the longest time. For the longest time, I couldn't even look in the mirror. Like, I hated myself. And I just feel like showing other women that you can do it and what we go through, and how we get out the other side. And Kimberly, you sharing that, like, that's like, you just showed that you can make these decisions for yourself, and it still makes you an incredible mom, an incredible person, and that's awesome. And living with women in a house is hard.
I mean, right now there's only 5 of us here right now, so it's not too bad.
That's
I
awesome.
think that's the cool thing about like social media platforms is like in my community, I live in a town of 60,000. There's a college and air base that makes up the majority of our population. So when you're talking about the AA fellowship and the NA fellowship and the stigma that goes along with some of the things inside that fellowship, a lot of people could get deterred from recovery very quickly. You know, but being the platform, you know, being the TikTok platform, the Facebook platform, whatever, I think everybody can find where they fit in, you know, because the sad truth is people aren't accepting, you know, with certain things. Some people are totally against masks, people are totally against smoking weed or drinking or whatever it is. So it's really cool to see that there is a place for everybody, and you're going to get those judgmental comments, or you're going to get people that don't really like the way you're going to recover or whatever. But I feel like no matter what, you can find your place, and there's more things popping up, like the smart recovery. There was something else I heard about the other day that has to do with math. I can't remember what it is, but it's some kind of fellowship. I think it's a 12-step based fellowship. So I just feel like then that's the one thing COVID has given us is, you know, I feel like the Zoom and the online fellowships have really grown and kind of expanded to make it a more all-inclusive, you know, so that way if you find a meeting, like if I don't like my local NA meetings, I don't go to the local meetings, and the Zoom option has really given me a chance to connect with other addicts in different places, and I get to learn about different things and kind of, you know, what's going on in their communities as opposed to here. So that's been a really cool thing to experience. You know, the judgment does suck, but I think it gives those with, you know, those with the more open minds or forgiving hearts or whatever, the ability to have that louder voice, you know.
And I think it's amazing to be able to see so many different ways to recover. You know, I got in trouble one time. I was in years of addiction from all sorts of stuff. Started with alcohol, you know, the whole whatever. And when I got into recovery, you know what I learned to do? The first thing I did was I shut the fuck up, to be honest. And I didn't question anything though. Like I remember I walked into the rooms, you know, and here I'm really grateful that it's so, the rooms that I walked into were welcoming, you know, and I know a lot of people struggle with, you know, and it disturbs me to be able to get on TikTok and to see all this stuff about how somebody's trying to find who they are, right? And they're working what's right for them. Like I'm complete abstinence only because I withdrew in jail for 90 days already. So I was already halfway through my like the rough withdrawal, right? Um and then that's why I never, you know, I'm a full-blown addict and that's what works for me. That's what I know, right? But I love everybody else's recovery and the people that are on a MAP program, that's saving your life. Let's be real. You know, if you're going to a place and you're getting your subscription and if you're using it and not abusing it, you're going so much further, you know, and that's like, it's so sad to see. And smart recovery, you know, I worked a 12 step. I got sober in AA as an addict, right? And I chaired the meeting. And you're damn right. I was like, hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a grateful recovering addict. And you know how many people are like, this is AA? And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. You know, like, what do you mean? So, like, I was kind of, like, clueless when it came to all that judgment, though. And it's just like, come on. Like, it's 2021. I work a smart recovery. You bet your ass I work multiple recoveries because multiple recoveries resemble what my recovery looks like. Like I worked 12 steps I did all of them. I still work them. You know, the longer you're sober, the more you remember. And so, but yeah, like I remember I asked my sponsor for the first year I was with her, every decision I made, I was petrified. I was scared of myself. I was so scared of myself because I knew I was on a suicide mission, you know. If it wasn't the drugs, it was the lifestyle and I couldn't live that way anymore. I hit that desperation. And I asked her for everything, right? Then I found smart recovery and I was like, wow, I am capable of being okay today. I know what's right for me. And I think that, I don't know, it's so sad to see on TikTok. Just it is judgment, you know, but it's everywhere. You know, it is in the rooms. And I think that, like, in recovery, we see that in early recovery, it's so hard. It's so hard. I hated myself. You didn't need to validate the reasons why I hated myself, right? Like, and that's where the judgment really came in. And but the more that I did the work, the more that I sat with myself, I got to find out who I am, and that's a beautiful thing. And even there was parts of myself I didn't like. I was a fucking liar. I was a manipulator. I was a cheater. You know, I was all of those things, and I decided that I didn't want to be those things anymore, and I'm not. You know, you grow.
And that's one of the things I hate the most about the judgment on TikTok is that we already have that in our head. We already have this huge list of reasons that we don't like ourselves, and you're gonna pick on the one thing that we're doing that makes us like ourselves. And that's like, for me, it took forever for me to come out on TikTok and admit that I smoke weed. As of right now, I don't have a medical card, but I'm working on getting it. But I have a lot of pretty serious mental health issues. I have CPTSD and borderline personality disorder. And the way borderline works is I basically I don't have a baseline emotion where I'm just okay. When my mood switches, it goes from one extreme to the next. And that played a big role in my addiction. Was I just wanted to be level. Like, I don't want to be high, I just want to be level. And weed gives me that, but it slows me down enough that I'm able to confront my fears and my anxieties and my character defects without being so overwhelmed with the emotion that's attached to it. And yeah, I have gotten hate for that, but guess what? It's working for me. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is most of the hate comments it's really just someone doing what they think is necessary to help you. It's all coming from a place of love. They're not as open-minded. And that's where I think it's important to educate people on how to help someone that has a different recovery pathway, how to meet someone where they're at. If you're against MAT and someone comes to you and they say they're on MAT or they're thinking about MAT, you can research MAT yourself to help them, or you can point them in the direction of someone that knows more about it. There's really no point in just, oh, you're not sober, you're not clean, you're not recovering, when there's other ways that you can use it to help.
And that is so hurtful to hear. Like, oh, you're not recovering. What do you mean? If you look up the definition of recovery, it's a healthy state, mind, body, and soul. So, like, I know Amy, she's on TikTok, and she spoke about the marijuana, and I was like, girl, if it works for you, like, honestly, like, it's all about figuring yourself out. In recovery, like, I could get, like, so into it right now. Recovery is fucking hard. Okay, there is so much stuff that gets on your plate at once. Okay, it's all at once. Like, I remember in jail, I was like, holy fuck, look at all this wreckage I made, right? And then I was like, I have to clean that up? No. And then I was like, well, if I don't clean it up now, I'm going to get more wreckage to clean up later. And it's so much, and mental health is so important in anybody's recovery. And I'm a firm believer in weed. I don't smoke weed. I'm completely abstinence because that's my recovery. I was a full-blown stoner, though. Like, I went from alcohol to marijuana. I was driving around with a Zong under the front seat of my car because I thought it was normal. Okay, like, that was me. That's how I take everything to the extreme. But I believe that we do recover. And, like, if I were to, I don't want to, like, jinx myself or anything, but if I were to get in a health situation later down in my life, you bet your ass the first thing I'm going to get on before prescription drugs would be marijuana. If that was smoking it or if that was edible. Because, first of all, you can't overdose on weed. You would literally fall asleep before you were able to actually ever die from weed. And it's a plant. But that being said, you can get addicted to anything. You can get addicted to sex, you can get addicted to weed, you can get addicted to food, right? Like, so there's so much against us in the first place. Like, we don't need to, figuring out what works for us is a beautiful thing, and I will forever support anybody. I think that's wonderful, Josie, that you were able to come out and speak your truth. That's where recovery starts. Like, fuck what they say. Who cares? Who cares? Come on. If you're bettering yourself and that's what works for you, I'm here to support you. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I'm glad it works for you, because if not, you could not be here with us today. And I think mental health is really important in anybody's recovery. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you. And I did try complete abstinence as well. The first time I got sober, I want to say the first 6 months, I was completely abstinent, and it wasn't working. I didn't have that baseline, and especially in early recovery, your emotions are already all over the place. When you throw in a mood disorder or a personality disorder, it is complete chaos. And it's still complete chaos around me, but it's not complete chaos in here. And because it's not chaos in here, I'm overcoming fears. I'm leaving my house. I'm a present mother. And I'm not going to sit here and say everybody should try smoking weed, because it's not something that works for everybody. I have a friend who straight up pawned her TV so that she could get some weed. Like that's more addictive behaviors, but I'm not doing that. I smoke 3 times a day before each meal, and it's just enough that I'm able to function. And my life, I can't even explain the amount of progress I've made in the last 6.5 months. This is the first time in my life that I've looked in the mirror, said, I do not recognize that person, and been happy about it.
That's awesome, Josie. I'm really proud of you. You know, and I think the thing about talking about our recovery, no matter what it looks like, is the fact that there's going to be so many people out there that need to hear that might be struggling with, you know, what is missing? What's my missing link? You know,
bingo.
And they could hear your story and relate. And it's all about being relatable. You know, Matt, that didn't work for me. I wasn't ready to recover. I just used it as a tool to get hired. You know, Boston, I just used it as a tool to make money. It didn't work for me. I tried them. But, you know, I encourage people to do that because I think people become so ashamed of not being able to be abstinent because it is fucking hard. You know, when you go from being a full-blown addict on probably 10 different meds needed for your mental health, and you're trying to take all of that out at the same time because you don't want people to judge you or you don't want people to think you're addicted to this or that, it becomes very, very hard. And I think the key to my recovery is talking, is putting it out there. You know, the more I stay silent about whatever it is bothering me, the more I just get so distracted with what the big picture is. So I'm really proud of you. I enjoy watching your journey for sure.
Oh, thank you. And I think a lot of the issue with the hate as far as Matt is people are getting hung up on technicalities. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the difference between clean, sober, and recovering. To me, none of that matters. What matters to me is your happiness and my happiness, my ability to enjoy life, your ability to enjoy life. As long as I see that, I don't care if you're California sober or completely abstinent or whatever. If you're happy, that's all that matters.
You brought up some really important things too, because like that's what I just love hearing about other people's experiences is because of how true and how real it is, right? Like I love how vulnerable you're being right now because it's the fact that you already tried complete abstinence. You know, like you tried that and you're like, this is not for me. I can't calm down this, you know, and compared to how much like drugs that they prescribe for mental health, it's just that can be just as dangerous, actually, if not more dangerous, right? And I don't know, I will always stand by people that are smoking weed. I will, because for me it's just a plant. Anything can be addictive, like I said, sex, food, you know, like, and that's where you get to figure out your own recovery. Yeah, when I made the TikTok, I was so confused about the California sober because I thought it was just weed. And then, I don't know, somebody talked about how it was multiple things, right? And that did scare me. I'm not going to lie. The California sober, if that is not using your drug of choice, but using other drugs to replace, I don't know. Okay, so like that's what I got from it. And that scares the fuck right out of me. Only like I will support anyone who smokes weed. I will. Like end of story. But like drinking, that's iffy because my mom was a very functioning alcoholic, and my story is that I'm so grateful that I used hard drugs. And I know that sounds weird, but because I'd be a functioning alcoholic today. Like, I know that the cycle that ran in my family would run through me. And I went down like, I have addictive personality, right? And I remember when I was in jail, some girl did a tarot reading. I'm not getting off topic. This is like, I don't know, it was crazy. So she did a tarot reading on me, and the death card came as an outcome, okay? There's only one outcome, and the death card was in there. And I started crying, and I was like, I'm going to die in active addiction. And she was like, Olivia, that's not what the death card means, that you're going to die. And she read it off, and it was like, you're going to kill something within you. And it even talked about addiction on the card. It was crazy. And it was talking about how if you figure out what addiction is for you, you'll never be addicted again. And I think that's so important, because you can get addicted to sex, you can get addicted to food, you can get addicted to fucking anything, right? Yeah, so the California Sober scared me only because it talked about, I think, using other drugs in replacement for a drug. And that just scares me, because that's deadly to me. Because I am an addict, right? Like, I go to the fucking extremes with everything, and I think that my problem, that even 3 years sober, right, like just last year, my emotions were fucking, I wanted to be a stripper, I wanted to go and do OnlyFans, I wanted to do all this crazy stuff. I did, though, and I'm in a freaking relationship, right? Like, I have a fiance, I'm pregnant, okay? Like, and I wanted to go do all these things that are unhealthy for me, because the lifestyle is addictive. The money was addictive, and it's easy. I really, like, I had so much fun in active addiction. So, like, I had to really just focus in on lifestyle is just as addictive for me, right? So, I don't know. I'm here to support all. Even if people are drinking, I just want you to be safe. That's it. Just be safe, because I know that for me, it would just be such a dangerous road to go down, just because I know the outcome for myself. But if it can work for other people, right? Like, so that's why I just want people to be mindful, that just to be safe, I guess.
I was talking about that last night. Like, I've never identified as an alcoholic. I've drank into an extreme. I've drank into a blackout, but I never craved it. I've never needed it to function in my day-to-day life. I've gone out as like a 26-year-old divorced day and partied my ass off. But, so to say, alcohol has been a problem for me, I can't identify with that. But I choose to remain abstinent from alcohol, because if I were to have one drink, and it's about the moderation thing. Like, I can have a drink in moderation, but then I'm gonna maybe have a shot, and I don't drink enough to know where that cutoff is. And once I get over that point, there's no telling what I'm gonna do. My chances are I'm gonna crave my drug of choice, and then I'm gonna act on that craving because I'm not in the right mind. So to me, it's just safer for me to not entertain anything that's going to get me in a state of mind where I can't make rational decisions. Because I made a post yesterday talking about, well, if we're going to get down to the nitty gritty and talk about mood and mind altering, nicotine, caffeine, food, sex, those are all mood and mind altering.
Yep.
But you stay in a state of mind that you're cognitive enough to make decisions, right? For the most part, So, I don't know. I don't see me ever really having a drink again, even though it's not a struggle for me, just because I don't trust myself. I'm one of those feel-good drunks. I'm one of those drinkers that if I'm drinking and there's a line of cocaine on the table, I'm down. It don't matter how sober I am, So, to me, it's just a safety net. When you talk about like California sober, I was like you. I thought it was smoke weed. That's what I thought California sober was. When you start entertaining ideas of drinking to a point where you're trying to get intoxicated, having a glass of wine at dinner, okay, cool. But when you're drinking to get to that point of intoxication, or you're using something, like when people talk about smoking weed, they're doing it to level out. They're doing it to feel normal. If you're smoking weed to get into a complete fog, you know, I think that's where you kind of cross the line, you know, because you're doing it to numb something, you're doing it to ground out something else. You know, like when people take Judgement, we were talking about this yesterday, you know, when you take it as prescribed or anything is prescribed, generally you're in a leveled state of mind. When you start abusing it, you know, then you really got to kind of reevaluate the situation. So, you know, that was my problem with meth. I took it to get to that high point. I didn't take it to maintain. I didn't take it to recover with it. I kept wanting to up my dose. That's when I knew, nope, this ain't gonna work for my recovery. It'll work for my addiction, but not for my recovery. So, you know.
And that's where I feel like honesty comes in.
Yeah.
With any pathway you choose for recovery, you have to be honest with yourself. If you're working with a mental health team, you have to be honest with them. So for me, I used to abuse Suboxone. So when I got sober and went to get comfort meds when I was coming down off of meth, my psychiatrist said, oh, well, you know, we can offer you this to help with your cravings. I flat out told her no. Like, that's not going to do anything because I used to abuse that. That's just going to keep me in the same cycle. So I'm not the type of person to advocate for for California sober, but I'm not entirely against it if you're smart about it. Jeannie, just like you said, if you're not abusing it, who are we to say that it's not working for you? But if you are doing it to numb, if you are doing it to escape, then that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, definitely, like, use it and not abuse it. And I think, like, for me, that's just, I don't know.
Why else do people drink? Why else do people do things? You know what I mean? Like, you gotta look at it like that. Because they're numbing something. I mean, it is what it is, in my opinion.
And they could, and also I think that it is good for, like, I don't know, I feel like it could be, like, that's why I so agree with, like, weed for some reason. I don't know why, but I feel like that could be, like, it's so beneficial. You know, like, you can literally look it up. And it literally, yeah, so, like, I think that weed, I really think that that's good, that can be so good of a replacement for mental health. You know, yeah, but I don't know. It could be, there's so many times that I numbed my pain through everything else. And when I came home from jail, I was a felon for the first time. And my mom, you know, I grew up in an alcoholic home. She's like, here, you want one? And tried to pour me a drink, you know? And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You know? And I was like, why? Like, because I had to go to rehab still. And I was like, no, because if I fail a test or I go to prison, you know, like, so yeah, there's just so many times that I numbed my pain through using stuff. And that's the thing. I'm just going to be like, this is real for me right now. I didn't use any substance, but I fucking cut myself. I cut myself for years in early addiction. Are you kidding? I never stopped. And I remember when I was cutting myself, my mom asked me, and she goes, why do you cut yourself? And I said, because I can heal it. I can physically hurt myself, and then I can turn around and I can mend the wound. And just like you said, Katie, like, that was because I didn't know how to handle the pain inside. I didn't know how to fix that. So I took it and I put it on my body physically so I could turn around and I could heal it. And I remember I did that for the longest time, and I could never feel the pain, right? And it was in my early recovery, and that was me covering up my pain, but I didn't know how to handle it. One time I cut myself, I think I got fucking high off it. Like, I cut myself, and I was like, ooh. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, no, never the fuck again. And I never cut myself since. But it was just crazy. And then after that, in my early recovery, I became a workaholic because I kept running from myself and I didn't know how to handle myself. I was still working the steps. I was cutting myself in the steps. I was working through the steps. I worked my ass off, so I never had to be home. But But that's my honesty, because that's how I covered up my pain, but that's also how I got through it with being complete abstinence from drugs, right? But now I'm using these other things and other ways to cope, trying to cope with what I'm feeling and how to overcome that. And it's scary, you know, now I got to deal with all these scars on my arms and my body, and it's like wow, you know, why, like, that's how hurt I was, you know, and I didn't know what to do. And I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like everyone gets to figure out the recovery thing, you know?
And that's definitely important to remember, is the human mind isn't all black and white. People, it's not as simple as this is right and this is wrong, because we all have our own experiences that brought us to addiction. We all have our own unique experiences in addiction. So our recovery, it wouldn't make sense for everyone's recovery to be the same if all of their experiences are different.
I know for me, I have to do complete abstinence. I've tried other ways to recover. I mean, I did use Suboxone to get through my detox, and then decided that I couldn't do it because in the past I've used being on Suboxone as an excuse to not go to meetings and not get a sponsor and not work the steps. So I knew this time that I couldn't do it. So I was on them probably my first 30 days, and then I just stopped. I told my doctor, like, don't call me anymore. I don't want to be on them. And I tried I don't have a problem with alcohol, so I can have a few drinks and I'll be fine. And then I think back and, you know, carrying a car, going on a break at work to take a few shots, like, that's not normal behavior. And that's what it always comes to. I agree. For a lot of people, I know a lot of people who are in recovery and that smoke weed, and it works great for them. I know for me that if I do, then I'm going to want to drink. And then after so many drinks, I'm going to, you know, be back living on the street with a needle in my arm again. Like, I know for me, from past experience, that's how it's going to be. But I know a lot of people who that's the path they choose, and it works great for them. So I definitely encourage people to just figure out what works for them. Because you guys are right, it is different for everybody, and everybody has different things that they have to deal with. When mental health comes into play, that's a huge thing that people have to overcome. Whether it be, you know, being on meds and taking them the right way, or using weed, or a counselor, however you can handle it. I do see a lot of judgment. Where I live, there's an amazing AA community and not a very strong NA community. And a lot of the old timers in AA will say this isn't the place for addicts. And it's actually been full topics at meetings before. And, you know, it's starting to get less because people are like, we have these sober houses around here, but we don't offer NA around here. Like, this is where they have to come for their recovery. Like, as long as they're not talking about specific drugs, like, leave them alone. Like, let them, you know. I do once or twice a week drive an hour and a half to my hometown where my kids live to go to a meeting up there because my hometown has an amazing NA community.
Awesome.
So, I mean, I definitely work both programs, and because that's what works for me. I like the AA because there's so much long-term sobriety, but I like the message I get from NA. So I choose to work both programs, and I'm judged. My dad's in AA and he's been sober for 33 years, but he sometimes is judgmental of me working both programs. He tells me I should pick, and I'm like, you want me to pick AA, but I need the messages that I hear from NA. I need to sometimes be able to sit in a meeting and talk about the hard stuff that some of them there don't understand. they are getting better. I think a lot of them, it's because there's a men's house and a women's house, like, right close together, and the majority of the people that live in the house deal with drugs, but we go to AA to hear the message. So they're getting a little more accepting, I think, but I've definitely seen a lot of judgment around it before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just recently started working a 12-step program, and there's stuff that, you know, people in AA believe that I don't necessarily, like, my beliefs don't line up with that. And it's the same thing with NA. That doesn't mean I'm not working the program. It just means I'm working it different. I'm tailoring that program to my specific recovery needs. And the only way we can really make a difference with that judgment is just being that change. Don't spread the judgment. Don't give too much attention to it. Because I've noticed too, in the recovery community on TikTok, I'm not seeing as much uplifting stuff. I'm not seeing as much motivational content. It's just this back and forth between, okay, this person's judgmental and this person doesn't like what they said, and it's hurting people. It really is. It's turning people away. That, I mean, like I had mentioned earlier, for the longest time, I didn't feel like I could be open on TikTok about smoking weed. And then I finally reached a point where I'm like, I don't care. This is working for me. If I wasn't doing this, or if I wasn't, you know, working my program my own individual way, I wouldn't be here today talking with you amazing women.
I totally agree. I think that MAT program, or whatever works for you, I just think I think it saves lives. And Kimberly, when you brought up, like, I feel like it's so important too. Like, if you're on a MAT program, you get to choose if you want to get off it, you know? And I think that's such a important thing for people to know is, first, like, there's so many people that are like, oh, MAT's horrible. What do you mean? There's a girl that was on a MAT program for 6 years. Okay, she's been sober for 4 years after that. She used her MAT program, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it should only be 1 year or 2 years or whatever. It's like, why are we, there's no book to this, right? Like, there's no book. There's no outline of what's right and what's wrong. It's literally just, everybody is literally individualized because, first of all, we all have our own story. We've all faced so many different things in our lives. We all have a different childhood. We all have a different, we can relate, but, like, our brain chemistry isn't even the same. We're not a program, right? Like, we're not robots. We can relate to things, but we're not all the same. And I think it's so important, like, we're so huge on the YouTube channel, is to be you and be true to you. And if that's using a MAT program and still working a program, or working whatever recovery works for you, that's important. And I will 100% support that, because we're just finding who we are. We're just figuring it out. And there's no fucking handbook to this shit. And I think we're doing good, you know? What?
Mommy, hi. I love you up there. Don't say hi to them. Say hi to them.
You want to say hi?
Yeah. Welcome up here.
No.
Hi.
Hi!
Hi, guys. The mommy
We got all the kids on right now.
They're like, oh, we hear kids
Awesome.
You had some too.
Yeah. Some nail polish.
Yeah. We need to do my pinky toes and my pinky toes and my toenails. This is for my toenails straight up.
They're gonna be beautiful.
Thanks. It's so hard.
Don't knock it down.
Open.
She's cute.
Are you making friends too?
Yeah. Looks like
Scooty's looking at you guys like, what the hell? Why does my mom always get on these things?
Okay.
Away, mommy.
You go away, Brayden.
I know, my son's so sick of meetings. He's like, another meeting, Mom?
And that's what's so amazing too, Jenny. You touched on it earlier, is having resources at our fingertips, you know, and that's why we really and that's why we really started our YouTube channel, is because we want these things out there for people, right? And you can go right in the description of all of our YouTube channels or all of our videos on there, and we have everything you could ever need, right? Like we have the substance abuse hotline, we have the suicide hotline, we have all the meetings available, and a bunch of different stuff. And I think that's important, is to be able to, like, us coming on here and putting ourselves out there, it's vulnerable, but it helps so many people, right? And I just want everybody to stand and just be happy with who they are today. And we're all doing really good.
Cool.
Back up. Never should me that the variety of people you'll get throughout, you know, your platforms. That, you know, like I had a lady the other day, and she was talking about like her kid's birthday and how she does her sober date, so she's sorry she made it crappy. And you know, here I thought she was going to be a mother of my age, and she's like, you know, my daughter's 32, and I'm like, you know, so you just get like people from all walks, all different ages, kids of all different ages, and for them to look up to you know, for advice or, you know, for inspiration, it's just crazy to me. It's, you know, for as much negative that the social media platforms bring, I think there's much more positive to be had out of it, for sure.
And that was something that I actually struggled with, because when I got ready to sponsor, one of my sponsees was like 11 years older than me. And she was like, how old are you? And I was like, well, I'm 23. And she's like, oh. And she like looked down on me since that. And I was like, when you find a sponsor or a spiritual person that you can trust in and help recover, you see them because they have something you want, right? Like we don't go up to the person that we're not interested, like we don't relate to them while they're sharing or anything, right? So that was so hard for me. I also was I don't know, that's just I don't know where I was going with that.
You're 23?
No, I'm 26.
Oh, okay. I was like,
see? That's what I'm talking about.
I think it's because you just come off as so mature and so,
yeah. I was like,
so much experience.
And I've always heard that. So I think that when she like asked me, she was like disappointed at how old I was. Like she couldn't listen to me anymore or something. Not listen. I don't tell her what to do, you know, but to help guide her along her recovery. And I also I became a manager at my store, and everybody was like, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm 24. They're like, oh. And I was like, why? They're like, because you act so mature. I'm like, I'm an old soul, okay? Like, I don't know what to say.
I like to think the trauma for
real
it.
old when you say 23. I mean, my son's 22, so when you said it, was like,
So that threw you off guard. That's what it was.
That was a good birthday.
Yeah, I turned 37 this year. I didn't start using really until I was like, well, I got some practice in 2010, but I don't really consider that like if they're prescribed by a doctor or whatever. But like I didn't really start like diving into the craziness until I was 32, and everybody I'm out living with is like 21, 20, and I was like feeling like the grandma of the group. So I don't know. Like I feel like I get the opposite. Like, oh, you're like 36 and still using drugs? Yeah, it's okay. I just turned 5 years older.
When I got into like Kimberly, when you were talking about how AA has more clean time and the NA is like lacking in your community, that's the same as where I'm at. And I went to AA because it's right around my house and I have a license, so I walked there, you know, and I was like, oh, I'm an addict, and I was just like, deep. And I got sober when I was 22. So when they were like, when I got there, there was a couple of them that told me I was too young to be in recovery. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And then there was this one guy that has been sober for 25 years. And he got into recovery when he was 21 years old and I think that's when, and he's never relapsed. He's been sober since, you know. But that's just how bad things get, you know. Like, you can be in recovery at whatever age, you know. And I think that a lot of people get turned away at young ages. Like, when they said that to me, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, really, like, what makes you think, like, that's okay, you know, to tell somebody that they're going to relapse because you're too young?
I mean, I feel like just in addiction, there's judgment. You know, I didn't start until I was in my late 20s, 27. After I got a divorce is when I started partying all the time, and then I stopped when I got pregnant with my youngest son, and then as soon as I stopped breastfeeding him, it became a daily habit. Before then, I could just do it on the weekends and it was fine. And then after he was probably 4 months old, it became a daily habit. And then I was using for like 5 years and I went to prison. And then this last relapse, luckily, after 6 months, I caught myself and I reached out for help. But people were like, oh, well, you didn't use long enough. Are you sure you're really an addict? I mean, yeah, I'm sure. Like, it ended me in prison. It ended up, you know, making me homeless and suicidal. Like, yeah, I'm an addict. Like, it doesn't matter the time frame. It doesn't matter your age when you started. It doesn't matter if you use for 6 months or if you use for 20 years. It doesn't matter. Like, you know when you know. Like,
I went to SSA, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous, one time, and the whole room was filled with men. Yay, right? So not a girl in sight, and I walk in there and I sit down, and at this point I took off to Rhode Island. I needed to do soul searching, and I already worked my steps all the way through my AA program. So I already faced my sex inventory and most of the trauma that I've went through. Anyways, I sit down at this fucking meeting, and these guys are like, well, this is Sex Addicts Anonymous. Like, bitch, do you think that I want to be addicted to sex? Like, you think I want to sit here right now with you guys and talk about my feelings? No. Like, what do you, and they're like, well, you have to be a sex addict. Excuse me? Like I said, I don't want to sit here with you guys. Like, obviously, I came here because I have a problem. And I was like, I already work other 12-step programs. Yeah, so it's just crazy that people literally, like, think that they can, like, oh, well, are you sure? Shop. Shop. People don't just walk into places to get help for something that they don't think that they have, right? What are you doing?
See, I'm the type of person that internalizes a lot, and for the longest time, I had that sweet and innocent vibe growing up. So now when I like come clean and I start sharing my story, I still have family members like, what? Like, you, the girl that was in the church choir, president of the youth group, like, you're an addict? Like, yeah. I was showing up to Sunday school hungover, Addiction doesn't discriminate. I started using when I was 12. By 13, I was taking, 2 shots of tequila and some Vicodin before I got on the school bus in the morning. Addiction doesn't matter how old you are, or it doesn't care, how young you look or what walk of life you came from. Once it finds you, it's just there.
Yeah, I get that a lot too. Like, you don't look like an addict, you don't act like an addict, or that statement forever drives me nuts. Like, what does an addict look like that? Please tell me. Yeah, I hear that all the time, and I'm very open about everything. My addiction, my felonies, and it just never ceases to amaze me that people that, oh, well, what was you addicted to? Drinking? Nope, I actually shot heroin in that. And then their jaws hit the floor. It never ends.
Yeah, I went to.
And I think
Go ahead, Josie.
I think that's another one of those issues that are kind of like special, or not special, I can't think of the right word, but for women in recovery is we do have to just kind of, regardless of our emotions, get up and just get stuff done. So we get really good at compartmentalizing and internalizing everything, and we did that with our addictions as well. Like, nobody knew that I was doing fentanyl until I was a month sober.
And I think that's like, I always, if I have the opportunity to share my story, you bet your fucking ass I do. I've always been like that. So like, I keep it like it's personal, but if I have the opportunity to share about it, like somebody brings it up or they speak about somebody that they lost, to like an overdose or something, I always bring it up. But like when I was a manager, there was this one girl and she like said something. I was like, yeah, I was a homeless heroin addict, and I prostituted myself. I did all these things. And she was like, what? I was like, yeah. She goes, what do you mean? And I was like, exactly what I said. Like, what do you mean? And she was like, oh my gosh, I would never expect that. And I'm like, most people wouldn't, I guess. Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, like we don't wear it on our sleeves, but like, it's still very, like, people don't understand that this is all around us. This is way more than just the addict that's in the bathroom at a store, or something like that. Like, it's so widely spread and so like right in front of us that we're blinded to it. Like a lot of people are just like, ooh, can't be you, can't be me, right? Like, but does anybody else have anything else to share about the topics today? No? Okay, well, thank you, ladies. I am going to keep you updated with the next group rotation. So I believe I will have that next group rotation on the 11th. So I will let you guys know before then, but also keep in touch. And yeah, if you guys have any ideas and you want to do something like on TikTok or I don't know, any ideas, then let us know and we'll all get together and stuff. So if not, I will talk to you guys then for the new group rotations.
Sounds good. Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Da, da, da. You're supposed to say mama.